Well, while you're doing that, pierwsza rzecz, jest bardzo miło rozmawiać do ciebie po polsku. Dziękuję za spotkanie dzisiaj. Jesteśmy bardzo zadowolone, panie pastor, że ty jesteś z nami dzisiaj.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję bardzo.
Ale szkoda, że oni nas nie rozumią. We have to speak in English.
Okay, so good to go.
Excellent. Well, first of all, let's start off. My name is Rob Stockey. I am a member of Police on Guard. I was a sergeant with Ottawa Police for 13 years before I left policing to get into private business. And today I'm in private business, but because of what we're seeing happening with people's charter rights being violated, an organization was started, and now I'm a part of that organization, Police on Guard. Today we have with us Pastor Artur Pawlowski. He had a recent incident that he actually had two incidents fairly recently with the police in his area. And Pastor, if you could please take the time to introduce yourself, and I'd ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself before you came to Canada, why you came to Canada, and what you're doing here today.
Well, as you can tell, I am a Polish immigrant. I grew up in Poland behind the Iron Curtain. I grew up in a country where we constantly were hearing the stories from my grandparents, from the older generation, about the Nazis, the fascists attacking Poland in 1939. I've heard the stories of the rapes and pillaging, murdering. And I grew up in a city, Kożuchów, in Knurów in Poland, a city that had a concentration camp. So we were always playing as kids in the bunkers of the Germans. And then also we have been visiting almost every year Auschwitz-Birkenau. So the history of Germans attacking us and doing what they've done to Polish people, where millions of Poles were murdered, is very dear to my heart. I love history. I love to learn about history, about what people are capable of if you don't put a check to the government overreach, how this escalates. And we have to remember that whatever Adolf Hitler did, whatever his party did, was legal according to them. He was democratically elected as the Chancellor of Germany, and then he implemented law after law after law, and those laws, according to him and his party, were legal, and people were forced to follow them. So, you know, I'm sharing always this story because people don't realize just because the law is legal, it does not mean is good or it's not against the human rights. Whatever Stalin did, Soviets, that was legal according to them, but that was, of course, evil and illegal according to any standards of human rights. I grew up in Poland, and we, of course, in Poland, we were living under the boots of the Soviets. I witnessed the overreach of government. I witnessed the police beating people up and torturing people. You could be arrested for anything, for listening to a European radio, 5 years jail time. If they would catch you with $1 American, you could go a year to jail. Always beatings, always torturing. There was 50,000 communists that were ruling over 36 million Polish people. So 50,000 masters and 36 million slaves. You could, nothing was in the stores. You couldn't buy anything. There was constant lineups. The economy was completely destroyed. People were suffering. It was darkness. If I can describe the colors of growing up under communism, it was gray. Everything was gray, shadowy, dark. People were depressed. That's why you have so many people behind the Iron Curtain becoming alcoholics. The whole country was drinking. There was no hope. So the only thing that they were holding on to was their faith, but the faith was under attack. Catholicism and Protestantism was under attack. The Soviets do not believe in any God. They believe in Stalin. Stalin was their God, and the party, the Communistic Party, was the state religion. You were commanded to worship communism. That's pretty much, in essence, what they wanted. Everything else, including God, was a competition that needed to be destroyed for the communists. I've seen I've seen the bribery. If you wanted to achieve anything, if you wanted to buy anything, if you wanted to do anything, you had to bribe. So people are bribing police officers, politicians, doctors, nurses, teachers. To buy something, you had to give a bribe. There were food stamps. For the younger generation, you know, people probably don't understand what that means. The government was telling you what you can buy and how much you can buy. So, for example, you could buy only 2 kilos of pork a month. You could buy only 1 kilo of sugar a month. So the government was telling you how much you can eat and what you can eat. They controlled everything. There was nothing. There was a total control of the media. You didn't have a free and independent media. Everything was run by the state. So whatever the state wanted you to hear, whatever the state was telling you is acceptable and needed, you had to listen to them. If you were caught, like I mentioned before, listening to a European radio, you were tortured, arrested, sentenced to jail for 5 years just because you dared to listen to outside media. Everything was corrupted. The only thing they were giving you was propaganda after propaganda after propaganda. I remember growing up as a kid, the teachers were telling us to remember that Stalin was Diedushka Stalin. Diedushka Stalin in Russian means Grandpa Stalin. So we had to refer to one of the most bloodiest murderers on the planet Earth as our grandpa. And grandpa would fix this and grandpa would do that. And he was our savior. He was the savior of Europe, Stalin. And of course, later on, we learned that all of this was just big fat lie. Like we are learning right now what is happening today. Every day we learn something new. The overreach of the government, the abuse of power, the intimidation, the fear tactics, the tyranny. That's pretty much communism in a nutshell. You had to be afraid. So the whole system was run by fear. If you don't do this, boom. If you don't do that, boom. And you never knew who is who because the snitch line was wide open. If you wanted to achieve anything, you had to become a good snitch. And you were snitching on your family. You had to snitch on your friends, on your neighbors. If you were a good snitch, the government will give you extra food stamps. So you can buy an extra kilo of meat for that month. So the system was unbelievable. When I share that story to the Canadian minds, they look at me like I'm crazy. The Canadian mind that was born free cannot comprehend what I'm even talking about. I give you another example. Usually once a year, my mom was able to buy me a chocolate. You know, Canadian kids don't.
Once a year.
Once a year. The Canadian kids don't think about chocolates. You go to Safeway, Walmart, Costco, and you can buy 1,000 if you want. And I'm sure you could afford 1,000, not a big deal. Not behind the Iron Curtain. Over there, even if you had money, it was very, very hard to buy chocolate. So I remember that once a year, if I was extremely lucky, and that year was amazing, my mom would buy me one for Christmas and one for birthday. And if happened that the chocolate had peanuts in it, what I would do is those little square bars and the peanut was inside, I would lick the chocolate around and save that peanut for the next day. So, you know, just to give you an idea, what kind of a childhood we had. You know, there were good things when I grew up. My parents loved me and they did their best to give us the necessities of lives. And we mostly spent time outside, climbing trees and playing soccer. But playing soccer was not that easy because only one kid in the entire neighborhood for thousands of people had a ball, you know, had a soccer ball. So you always had to wait for him in his mercy to show up at the field so we can play soccer. And if he couldn't come, there was no soccer game. If he came, he was the boss because he was the only one that had the ball and we could play soccer. For many years, I was dreaming of owning a soccer ball. And I remember when finally I was able to buy one, I was the happiest kid on the block. I mean, imagine owning your own soccer ball. Like, wow, you don't have to wait for a week for the other boy to come with his ball. I could use mine. So that's in a nutshell what communism is. I also witnessed in 1981 the uprising, the revolution in Poland under solidarity.
Can I stop you there? Because I'd like to get to that at the end. I understand. I know all about that, and I want our fellow Canadians to learn about that, because that essentially is the solution, at least in my mind right now. And I think that would be an excellent way to end this, to conclude this interview. So the next question I would ask you is, and that was gripping, Pastor, what you had just described. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background here. So I was born in Canada, although at the beginning of this we spoke Polish. The people who are watching this will not see that. My father had a contract with the government, and he was bringing over Polish immigrants to Oshawa, and they were settling in Oshawa and working at GM and many of the car plants. So I got to hear a lot of the stories, and I got to see the people, and it was very much, they would come here and they couldn't believe the freedom that we were experiencing here at that time from where they came from. So I would ask you to describe, if you could, what it was like when you first came to Canada out of the Iron Curtain, what year it was, first of all, when you came here, how you felt, and what Canada was like then. Through your eyes.
First of all, my father escaped Poland in 1989. That was where the Berlin Wall was being taken down. The communism was collapsing. Russia was separating. So that was this transition. However, during that time, mafia took over the entire country. So it was very dangerous. It was very bad. Still, the communists were in power, but there was transition. And there was a witch hunt, and everyone was hating everyone pretty much. So my father decided, okay, it's time to start a new life somewhere else. And he escaped to Greece. And he asked us after a while, he says, Greece is a beautiful place. You can work hard, you can achieve something. He started to have a business, and he says, come to us. And so we applied to leave the country, because to leave the country, you needed the permission of the government. You couldn't just go. I'll give you a little story how serious those people were. My mother-in-law, my wife's mom, during communism, she was sick of it, and everyone was sick of it. Even the communists hated it. I mean, everything, this whole country was destroyed. It was depression everywhere. So she wanted to escape. She wanted to escape into the Berlin on the other side, on the west side of Berlin. So she bought fraudulent documents. To leave the country, you needed a passport, and the government would not give you a passport if you were not a communist. So she managed to get some documents, but they were poorly done, and she was caught. She was caught because she just wanted to cross the border, escaping communism into a free and democratic society. She was caught. She was sentenced many years to jail, and my wife was born in jail. And she had to spend a few years in jail as a baby. So that's how she came to this side of eternity. So my father in 1989 escapes, and it was not an easy thing to leave the country. And if you did it illegally, again, years of jail and beatings and all that stuff. So we applied for visa to leave, and we were denied 3 times. It took us actually a long time to ask the government over and over again, 3 times, to allow us to go. And they said no every single time. So what we decided to do, if you had lots of money, we didn't have lots of money, but we sold everything in Poland. So everything that my parents were working for 20 years, we sold everything we could. And with all of that money, we bought tickets on a boat, Russian boat, to go to Istanbul, Turkey. And from Istanbul, we escaped to Athens, Piraeus in Greece. And then we were reunited a year later in 1990 with my father, when I was living already in Greece. So that's how we escaped Poland. We established a business over there. It was actually a pretty good life for us. We were hardworking people. We achieved something. We were making good money, but everything was run under the table. It was a corrupted nation. You had to bribe the police. You had to bribe the politicians. You had to bribe everyone all the time. And we were sick of that because of Poland. Everything was run by bribery. And now we are in Greece. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. It's a hot country. We are making good money. We are really making good money. I call that period of my time my El Dorado, because I was making gold. It was really good. However, everything was corrupted. and we were sick of it. And I will tell you the meeting we had in a Canadian embassy when this gentleman, I'll never forget, he says, come to Canada. We want people like you. Bring your business, sell everything you have here, bring it to Canada, and you can achieve. This is a free country, a country of new beginnings. And you're going to have your paradise here. No one is going to hunt you because of your faith. This is the freest country on the planet Earth. Come to Canada. And so we decided with our parents, okay, let's emigrate to Canada. Even though financially we're doing extremely well in Greece, we've sold everything we had, the cars and equipment, and we moved to Canada in 1995. So that was the first time that I arrived in the city of Calgary, and I saw what Canada is. And then the first shock that I had is everything is run by law and order. There's no chaos like in Greece. There was no lawlessness, open lawlessness like I witnessed when I was growing up. When I saw the police officer, I'm telling you, I look at their uniforms and I was like, wow, those people are not beating anyone on the streets. Like, that's crazy. They're not arresting anyone just because they can. And you kind of had this, and to this day, even though they've hurt me so many times, I still have this deep, deep respect for the uniform in Canada. When I see a police officer, I still remember that time when I thought the police officers are actually standing for law and order. I remember the police vehicles, and I didn't speak English at all at the time. And someone translated me, and it says on the police vehicles, it says, and serve and protect. That's a foreign thing for a Polish immigrant that grew up under communists to serve. They're serving us. They're not beating us up. They're not trying to get the bribe from us. They're going to serve me, and they're going to protect me. They're not the villains. They're not the muscle for mafia. Like, wow. So that was my first initial thoughts, and everything was run by order. It was no chaos. You know, I'll tell you a few things that we were absolutely shocked, and this will sound weird for you Canadians, but when we arrived here, we wanted to cross the road. And in Greece, you can't just cross the road. You got to run because you will be run over. No one stops for you. You know, you got to run. The cars are gods, and if you're not quick, you will be run over by the cars. And I'll never forget this moment with my mom and my brother and my father. We went shopping, and we have all those bags from Safeway coming back to our apartment, and we want to cross the road, and we were ready to run because the cars were passing, and it was a crossroad, so a legal way to cross. But in Greece, you got to run. It doesn't matter what. And the car stopped. And it's like we were a little bit puzzled. They stopped. They don't want to run us over. I mean, this is crazy. They stopped. And we were so puzzled by this. And we started to walk across the thing. And they waited patiently until we crossed the road. In Greece, if you're in the middle, you got to run constantly because they will not stop. They'll keep pushing and, almost hitting you. So those are the few memories I have when we emigrated here in 1995. The law and order, the uniform that I remember growing up in Poland, Canadian RCMP, especially the red uniforms and the mounted police, was something like, wow, this is, you kind of put them on a pedestal. This is the country of milk and honey, a total freedom, a place where you will achieve something. If you want to work hard, you can do it, and no one will ever persecute you just because you believe differently than another human being. So that's then I started to work in a business. My wife came a year later, and steady, we rebuilt our business. I became again very successful here. I was part of the media party. I had my own magazine. I had a development business, building houses for the richest people. So we were doing really, really. And then I became involved with the homelessness, and that's where the trouble started.
And so what happened with the homelessness? You're involved in the homeless community, or you became homeless?
No, I was actually doing very good for myself. We used to own many homes and properties, and my business was flourishing. But I had an incident with God, put it this way. My son was born with a heart on opposite side and a smashed lung, and the doctors told me that he's not going to live, that even if he survives, he's going to be vegetable for the rest of his life. So they asked us to unplug him. But my wife was very strong Christian, and she said, no, I don't allow you, fight for the kid, and I'll pray. So she called everyone, the pastors that she knew, Christians, and they started to come to the hospital, Calgary Children's Hospital, and pray. And she was reading the Bible to him, playing music. And I had my little rebellion with God. I said, why me? You know, when something happens to you, you always want to blame someone. I was blaming God. Why me, God? Why are you picking on me? What have I done to you? So I had a few days of that. And then finally I calmed down. And anyway, the story is long. You can watch it. They did a documentary on this miracle because the doctors said that this is, they cannot medically explain what happened. My son should not be alive, but is living, should not breathe, but is breathing. And they call this baby a star baby because a miracle happened. When the surgeon opened my son up, it says that there is absolutely nothing there. The heart was pushed, the lung was not there, and then suddenly it appeared. And they could not explain what happened. So telling the story short, you can watch the whole story on a documentary that they did on this. It's called Street Advocate. And there is a full story over there. So for the sake of time, I just don't want to take too much time on this.
Yep.
This miracle changed my perspective on life. I realized that there are few things you cannot buy. You cannot buy happiness. You can be the richest man on the planet Earth. You can be the most miserable man. You cannot buy peace. You can have everything, all the toys on earth, but you will never have peace, inner peace in your heart. You cannot buy health, really. If something is really messed up, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If it's broken, it's broken. And I realized that doctors could not fix my son, even though they had unlimited resources. And they wanted to fix him, but they couldn't. Also, you cannot buy a marriage, really. To have a good marriage, you just have to work things out, and you need God. So all those things were fixed for me. I became a Christian. I asked God to forgive me for all my crazy stuff that I've done in my life. I made peace with my wife that I wanted a divorce from. And I decided that I don't want to be a selfish man. Again, I was making good money, but I was a very selfish man. I was just living for myself and for my empire. And I decided to help those that no one else really wants to help. And I went to the ghettos of Calgary, the worst places you can imagine. As an officer, you know those places. But this is a place that the police didn't even want to come. It was called the Needle Park because it was infested with needles in the city of Calgary under the bridges, and the police were not showing up over there. I'll just give you an idea, about 50 drug dealers and about 50 prostitutes, and we brought a grill and a church in the middle of that craziness. And I started to tell them about what happened to me, how selfish I was living, how he healed my son, how he changed me. I was an alcoholic. In 1999, I stopped drinking completely, and to this day, I don't drink, I don't use drugs. I was telling them my story, and behold, people were listening more and more and more, and they were changing their lives, and we were taking them off the streets. In 3 months, we took 600 people off the streets in the city of Calgary, and the government got a hold of that story. The media started to write reports on this street church growing on the streets, and a businessman leaves his business and works with the homeless, a positive, until one day everything switched when the politicians got involved and I became the enemy of the state. Police started to show up telling me that feeding the poor is illegal, that I cannot preach, I cannot congregate. Pretty much everything that I thought Canada stood for under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was told to me that it's now illegal. Giving free goods.
I'm just going to stop you there for a second. When did this happen? When did things turn? What year was that?
I started to work with the homeless in 1999, but that was kind of part-time. I still was a businessman, so most of my life was business related. And once a week, I would go and help the poor. And that was going on until 2005, when I walked away from business completely and I devoted my entire life to organize something that is big, something that will be able to feed masses, thousands of people, and get them off the streets. When I became a full-time missionary, if you will, then the government got noticed because I was becoming very, very successful in taking those people off the streets. So just give you a little bit of a background. A homeless man normally, usually on average, not all of them, but on average, uses about $100 to $1,000 a day worth of drugs. That's why they're pushing drugs as well, the homeless people, to buy drugs for themselves. But let's just keep an average, $100 a day. We're talking about millions of dollars that someone lost within 3 months by us taking 600 people off the streets. Someone somewhere was losing a lot of money. So the politicians got involved and the shelters got involved, because it turned out that the shelters, drop-in center, was selling drugs to their inmates. I call them inmates because drop-in center has about 1,000 homeless people inside. That's a perfect place to push drugs, and that's exactly what was happening. And I was interfering.
So you're saying, so I just want to be clear, because you're saying, are you suggesting that the people who work there for the government were selling drugs to the inmates? Is that what you're saying?
Of course, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I'm totally, let them challenge me. I got about 100 testimonies recorded. That's exactly what was happening. The staff supervisor in drop-in center, the biggest shelter in Alberta, was pushing drugs to the homeless people. And when I interfered with that, when I was exposing that, I had a TV show for 4 years. So I was talking about this. I was on the radio all the time. I was telling people about what's really going on behind the closed doors, the abuse of power, the rapes of the women, homeless women, and the pushing of the drugs. They hired twice assassins on my life. So it was a serious stuff. Of course, the media didn't believe. The media put the story down, but instead of helping me to expose, I got the crackdown from the government officials, and the police and the bylaws started to show up, and I started to receive tickets. During that time, from 2005 to 2015, I received over 300 tickets, over about 100 court cases, about a dozen arrests. I faced years of jail. I was the first Canadian citizen to be arrested for publicly reading Bible just because they wanted to get me out of the streets. I was not using amplification during that encounter, just read the Bible to 6 parishioners. 6 officers showed up. I was handcuffed. They forced me to walk backwards, and then I was facing a year jail time. I won that case as well.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I just want to clarify a few things. So what were you charged with? What were you charged with?
Well, I was charged of resisting arrest, and thank God we were recording, because if I did not have the camera, I would be in jail. I was charged with assaulting officer, I think, which is ridiculous when you watch the video, cursing him. I was charged with disturbing peace. I think this cop brought everything he could in a book to slap me with. So I had 7 criminal charges for that arrest.
Were you convicted of any of those charges?
No, I was never convicted. I won that case. And the officer that lied about this, manufactured the documents, lied in the police report, faced 3 charges himself for lying. And he was in court defending himself, after a few years, when I won my case, and that was we filed a complaint for his lying, and he ended up in a court with three charges on himself. So fast forward.
Just out of curiosity, I know we're here for a different matter, but this is interesting. What was the outcome of his charges? Do you remember, or do you know?
Nothing. He was a veteran, a soldier, highly decorated, and then he was, I was told, a good police officer. Okay, a good veteran, and nothing. He was. However, I have to be clear about it, because when I was asked to come and testify, I was a very strong believer at that time. I was a pastor already, and I made a statement to the court, and I asked the court to let him off the hook. I said to the court, I forgive him. I don't want him to be disciplined. I don't want him to lose the job. I forgive the man. And if he can apologize for what he has done to me, that's good enough for me. And he did. So I think the court looked at my testimony and just let him off the hook. And I'm glad that they did, because I was not after this officer's job. He did what he did, but years were passing. I didn't have a grudge against him. I forgave him. And I just wanted to move on with my life, and I wanted him to move on with his life. And you know what? He hugged me in front of the court and he cried when I said that. So that was totally a God moment. I know God wanted me to forgive him publicly and let him off the hook. And there was a very deep moment. I'll never forget that time when he came to me and he gave me a bear hug, and he was holding me and crying. So fast forward 10 years later, I win all the fights, all the 100 cases. I received my permits back. I didn't receive the apology from the government. However, I was vindicated in the court system. The judges said that the police were lying about me. They actually called them liars, the judges, that they manufactured documents, bylaw officers manufactured documents against me, and all of that was proven in the court. I was vindicated and let go to do what I wanted to do all along, is feeding the poor, preaching the gospel, and taking people off the streets. For a few years, I have a great time, no problems, no one harasses me, no police, no bylaws. I even received from the city special permits to drive my truck into the sidewalk to unload, and barbecues, and no problems whatsoever. I actually really enjoyed that time, that no one was harassing me and bothering. I could focus on the church. I could focus on the homeless, how the best to assist them and save as many lives as possible, until last March. Last March comes, I got the letters from the city hall. You have to stop feeding the poor. We are in the middle of pandemic. That's it. You can't do anything anymore. And I said, I'm the only source of necessities of life for those people. If I stop feeding them, who is going to feed them? Now you're going to have thousands of people roaming the streets, and they're going to whack your head or your grandma's head. They're going to break into the house or the cars, garages. They're going to get necessities of life. Everyone, I would too, if I was forced to break because there was no food. Those people have
Pastor,
no
do you, aside from your services, are there, like here in Ottawa, we have numerous social services in our downtown area. In downtown Calgary, do these homeless people have services? Do they have places they can go to for a meal, like a church cupboard, or a basement of a church somewhere where they have an open sort of meals for the homeless? Do they have those services where you are?
There are shelters. There's Salvation Army, there's Drop In, there is Master Seed. There are shelters. However, we're dealing with half mentally ill that are not allowed in the shelters, violent, people that are most wanted. They don't go to shelters because we have face recognition softwares in the shelters. So they cannot go because they're running from authorities, of course, which is a lot of them actually. And we have people that have been abused in the shelters, especially women that were raped or forced to have sex with the staff people in the shelters. And they just don't want to go over there. They're afraid, they're terrified. Many homeless people that come to me, they said, I don't want to go to the shelter because they're abusing us. They're treating us like dogs, like slaves. And a number of homeless people are barred from shelters because of their language. You know how homeless are. If you curse, then you're barred for 30 days. If you say anything, you're barred for half a year. I mean, that's the game they're playing. So many of our clients are either mentally ill, running from authorities, or are barred from shelters. So we deal with the worst of the worst, the lowest of the low, and they are coming all to us. We are the only source of the necessities of life. We give them clothes, we give them food for the next day, and we have hot meals. And the government in March declared that we cannot feed them anymore because of this crisis. I disagreed. I said it's better to feed them, even if I have to follow the social distancing thing, which we did at the beginning, and separate the crowds. I'll do all of that, no problem. But let's keep feeding them, because the likelihood of them going and hurting people is very high. Those people will get food this way or that way. So let me give them the food so they won't hurt other people. They disagreed with me. The mayor, we have a Muslim mayor here, Nahed Ninshi, disagreed, and he ordered a total shutdown of our soup kitchen. I disagreed, so 12 officers shows up. I end up with a $1,200 ticket. I became the first clergyman in Canada to get a COVID ticket. And one of my parishioners was assaulted by the police, and I was threatened with the arrest. And I was told that if I don't stop feeding the people, I will be not only arrested, I will get $1 million ticket. So we were going back and forth. I appealed that to the mayor. I appealed that to the cabinet ministers in the province of Alberta. And they've told, some didn't reply, others that they said we can't do nothing, even though we got to remember soup kitchens are exempt from the lockdowns. But they didn't care. They used that force, the pandemic, to shut me down, because you got to remember they have a beef against me from the previous years of embarrassing them on a global scale by winning over 100 court cases with the government officials. And I'm not talking about just Crown prosecutors. I fought with the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, a number of MPs, MLAs, councillors, mayors, 2 mayors. So this was international. They were even writing about us in Russia. So we have become a great embarrassment for the city of Calgary. The city officials told me that my lineups are an embarrassment. So when we feed the poor, of course, there is a lineup that is being created, and now they cannot hide it. They cannot hide that there is a crisis in Calgary. They cannot hide that there are poor, homeless people roaming the streets, especially now during the pandemic, right? So they did everything in their power to shut down our soup kitchen, so no one would know that there is thousands of homeless roaming the streets during this pandemic time. I started to receive tickets, and law enforcement started to come left and right. I mean, crazy. We were videotaped. Our parishioners were harassed, intimidated. My volunteers were intimidated by police, bylaw services, and I would end up with another ticket. The culmination of the story came during Christmas. And I don't know if you remember, the federal, provincial, and municipal governments declared that they are canceling Christmas. That's what they said. We're canceling Christmas. And I said, you are people insane. You can't cancel Christmas. You can't cancel God. I know you're trying very hard. You shut down the churches, but you cannot cancel Christmas. So I invited people to come to the biggest Christmas celebration in the country. And we had lots of people showing up. We had gifts for the homeless, carolers, musicians, speakers, and we have given away food to lots of people. And we had over 100 police officers. We had 52 police cars and about 20 police on bicycles. We were videotaped, pictures were taken, and I ended up with 11 COVID tickets after that event. So that's outside. 4 times a week, we feed the homeless people on the streets. However, I also pastor another church, a building where I teach history and theology. And I was flying under the radar for a long time. I didn't want the police to come over there. I was not looking for a fight, but unfortunately they showed up. So one day I'm opening the church and the authorities came, peace officers, bylaw services, and the police uniformed, and they blocked our driveway, preventing
that's the famous video you're talking about right now, right?
No. That's what led to the video. So they blocked the parking lot of the church, and they demanded that I would let them inside the facility. And I said, no, the Criminal Code of Canada, section 176, 1, 2, and 3 protects me. And it's clear, you cannot interfere with the church gathering. You cannot harass, intimidate. You cannot interfere with me as a clergyman while I am on the way during and after I'm coming from conducting church services in my duty as a clergyman. That's the law. That's the criminal law. Don't do it. And I kicked them out. Only for them a few weeks later to come back to outside. They stayed outside of our facility and they changed the tactics. So here's what they did. They used a long lens cameras to capture every child and every woman that was coming to the church, to intimidate us, to come after, just like the Soviets, KGB and the Gestapo. That's why I call them Gestapo and Nazis, because their tactics are becoming identical to the tactics of the Nazis during early 30s. I'm not yet suggesting they're shooting us dead and building concentration camps. I'm just saying that their tactics are becoming very familiar to the tactics of the Nazis in the beginning of the regime, which is early 30s in Germany.
Well, they are building facilities. They are building internment facilities. They're not calling them concentration camps, but they've been built in every province.
Yes, I've seen them. Yes, the COVID places or whatever now. There's FEMA camps, right? I've seen that as well. But they're not shooting us dead yet.
They're not.
It's just the beginning. We are at the early stages. So when I saw them taking pictures of our parishioners, I gave them a hard time and I kicked them out, and they left. Only a few weeks later to come back, and that's the famous video that was watched over 1 billion times, the #1 watched video during the Easter weekend. And of course, I didn't know that this is going to be that crazy. I started the church service to prepare everything because I come an hour early before the people come. I have to set up equipment. I have to set up the projector, computers, cameras, chairs, everything. And the choir was already starting. The prayer people started to pray. And then I look to my left and I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I see masked bandits. I mean, in uniforms, some weird people right walking into the holy place. And I shouted from there, I said, get out, and they would not move. So I ran to the pulpit. That's where I had my telephone, and I started to record a conversation. And I started really polite, firm but polite. I said, please get out. They would not budge. They would not move. So everything after that intensified. I had to tell them over 30 times to get out of the facility. They were told before they are not welcome. They're not allowed to come. I'm protected under the section 176. If they want to inspect the facility, I'll gladly open the facility to them, but not during the church service. I will not allow them to come and intimidate the parishioners while people are on their knees, while they're crying, while they're praying. I mean, that's insanity. That's totally insanity. But they didn't care. They didn't care. They walked in like it's a restaurant, trespassing. Even though they were told they're not allowed to come, they trespassed. They walked in and they wanted to have a conversation. And you know from the video, I would not have a conversation with them. Come back with the warrant. They left. I posted the video before my sermon, not expecting anything really, you know, maybe a few thousand people like I always have would watch it and that's it. And I was shocked when I realized millions of people watched the video, and it's like all over the news. It's everywhere. Donald Trump, the president, was talking about it. The Kennedys, I mean, it was just crazy. And I started to have phone calls, and people were asking me to be on the show and talk about what happened, and that embarrassed the police force and the city of Calgary and the whole Canada government on a global scale, and they came with a vendetta against me because 3 weeks later they showed up, but they didn't show up by themselves. They brought a SWAT team with them.
I saw the pictures, and you'll get into it, but I just want to tell you something. Having watched that video, having watched you having to come out to get down on your knees and arrested, in policing circles, we're all trained to do that. And that is a tactic you apply to high-risk individuals, people who are armed, people who you are fear for your life, that they're going to try to kill you. Now, I know about your history. I have no knowledge of you trying to kill anyone. Is that true?
No, of course not. There is not even one incident that you can pin me to violence. I did defend it myself a few times where we were attacked by Antifa or gangs, of course, and I will do that to anyone that wants to destroy me or kill me with knives. And so I was defending myself. I have never been charged with assault, and I have no criminal record at all. I have clean record, and
just for the sake, people are going to try and pick that apart. What I'm hearing you say is you've never been convicted of assault, because previously we discussed the number of charges that you were facing, and an officer made allegations that, if I remember correctly, that you were assaultive and he charged you with assault police. Is that correct?
No, I was never charged with assaulting the police officer. What resisting arrest, I think what it was.
Very well.
Resisting arrest, not assault. If I said assault, no, it was, I think I said resisting arrest, but maybe I'm mistaken.
It could have been me painting a picture. It's fine. At least we're clear about it, so that's good. Okay.
Resisting arrest. I was never charged with assault, either police officer or anybody else in my life. I was never convicted of any crime. I was charged multiple times or everything related to me and my faith. So feeding the poor against the laws, giving free goods and services, illegal distribution of printed material like Bibles and gospel tracts.
Yeah,
right. Stuff like giving sandwiches. I was charged with that. Displaying signs, which is Jesus is King, or having a cross. I was charged with that. Stunting, because when we feed people, they said there's a distraction to motor vehicles. I was charged with that. Using amplification system, I was charged with that. Disturbing peace, because I used the amplification system, I was charged with that. Placing grill on the ground, because there is a law, placing material on the city street is illegal, which is a sidewalk, because street and sidewalk is considered a street. I was charged with that. So I was charged with bogus charges, about all of them related to my preaching and feeding the poor. Never once I was charged with mischief or anything not related with my duty as a clergyman, my job.
What about uttering threats? Were you ever charged with uttering threats?
No, never. So going back to the story, because you jumped to my arrest, before the arrest, they came again 3 weeks later after the viral video. They came again with a SWAT team, and they again came trying to come into the church building with a warrant. They got a court order. That the court order at that time, I didn't know what it says, because I started to read the court order, but she was interrupting me constantly. And finally I said, you know what, contact my lawyers. They know I have a lawyer for a year. My lawyer is representing me on all the cases. They know that. The lawyer is back and forth with the Crown prosecutors and the police. They know that, but they didn't send the court order to my lawyer, so the lawyer can explain to me what that means. They didn't send me the court order. They know my emails. They know everything about me. No, they showed up at the church during the church service to try to do the same thing, walk in during the church service. I started to read the document. She kept interrupting me. And I said, you know what, forget about it. I'm going back to the church to worship and to officiate to do my job. And then you send this to my lawyer. Let the lawyers figure it out. And they left. And I was already preaching. And they came back half hour later, SWAT team again, trying to do the same thing while I was already at the pulpit. And my associate pastor said the same thing. Please do not interrupt the gathering. That's unlawful, section 176. And they left. They left only to charge me with the contempt of court order. So I'm being charged right now with the contempt of court order, because I would not allow them to come into the church service, even though I was not aware of the content of the order, because she did not allow me to finish reading even, and it was a very stressful situation. I just said, contact the lawyer, let the lawyers deal with this, because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what that means. And I thought maybe they will just let me be, but that was not the case. They showed up again, and at that time I already was consulted with the lawyer. The lawyer told me I have to open the door. If I don't do it, I will be found in contempt. And I said, I don't want to do that. So I left the door open. And I've told them publicly, doors are open. You want to come in, it's open, you can do it. And the police refused to do it. AHS refused to do it. The second weekend came, I opened the doors again. Police showed up, but they refused to enter. Instead, they dropped an envelope, a plastic bag with something in it, but I was already officiating church service, so I was not there. I was not at the door. Doors were open for them to come in as per the request of the judge's order that I am to allow them to come in, because the order said this: that I have to allow them to come in, and they can come in from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. anytime, any day of the week. So they have access to my facility anytime they wish, and they can bring anyone with them they want. So SWAT team, no problem. But I had no choice. So I left the door open. They refused to come in. Instead, a few weeks later, they charged me with the contempt of the initial time when they showed me the document, but I could not even read it. And they completely ignored the 2 weeks after that I opened the doors, and I said, okay, now I've read the court order and I'm obeying by what it says. The Saturday week ago that was leading to the arrest, I opened the church like always. And again, we are talking about me opening the church. That's my crime, okay? I didn't smuggle drugs. I didn't plant a bomb. I didn't plant a terrorist attack. I opened the church. That's my crime. As a pastor, how dare you opening the church? How dare you open the church for anyone that wants to come freely as adult? How dare I did that? So the church was already happening, the worship was happening, and I was told, being at the front, the SWAT team is coming. So I peeked through the window, and behold, they are coming, big force, number of officers, they're coming. I said, okay, that's it. Today I'm going to jail. And I waited at the altar, at the pulpit, where I waited for them to come. But then I realized they're not coming. And someone says they left. I said, oh, I thought they're coming to arrest me. No, they left. I said, okay. So I continued my service. We worshiped, I preached, I prayed for people. I did what I always do as a pastor. And then people started to go home, and I closed the church. We always clean after, and it took me a while with the team, and we cleaned it and we packed everything, and then we loaded the car, and I started to drive home with my friend. There was a driver, Dave Hughes. I was in the front, and my brother David was in the back of the car. We didn't think about problems. We didn't expect it to be arrested, because why? I opened the doors like the judge wanted. The doors were open, and they refused to walk in. They were told by the people, I told them specifically, tell them to come. They can come as per the request of the court. They can come. There's nothing I can do about it. Let them come. And they said, no, we're not coming. And they dropped this thing on the ground. They didn't give it to anyone. They just dropped it on the ground, and they left. And according to them right now, because I'm charged with a second contempt of court order, according to them, that was a proper service. While I'm preaching already, I'm already there worshiping God, officiating a church service. And according to them, I was properly served with a court order, and that warranted them the arrest that happened on the highway. So we're driving home. I'm not thinking anything about it. I wanted to forward this information to the lawyer and find out what this whole thing is all about. I didn't have a chance to do anything because we were stopped in a busy highway. And I said to the driver, so look, there are flash lights behind. So I think they're coming for us. And he stopped his vehicle. The police officer came, and he looked at me and says, you're under arrest. And David, he looked at David, he says, David is under arrest as well. Please step out of the vehicle. I had the camera rolling, so I did. I couldn't go to my left, to my right from the passenger side, because they stopped us on a busy highway and there was a concrete barrier on my right. So I had to go around the car to the driver's side, and that's what I did. And then the rest is the history. I'm on my knees. The police officers are yelling at me saying, oh, stop resisting. I mean, this was the most, I think out of this whole ordeal, this was the most pathetic thing they said. Stop resisting, he's yelling at me. Stop resisting, stop resisting. Did you see me resisting during the arrest? And he's yelling at me and stop resisting, stop resisting. I'm thinking like, I'm not resisting. I'm on my knees. My hands are like this. I'm not resisting anything. But that's what he said a number of times. And then I was carried to the cruiser. They opened the door of the cruiser, and they pulled me up, and they searched me. They frisked me, and took my driver's license, they took my keys, and they took my exemption card because I have a doctor's exemption letter with me all the time because I'm always fighting those Nazis about the masks. So they took that away and they changed their mind. Instead of putting me into the cruiser, they dragged me to the police van. And this police van is a short version of the police car. It's not this long one. And it's so only usually one person can fit over there. It's extremely small and I was not fitting. They pushed me on my back. And of course, you're an officer. For some people, they will not understand what I'm trying to say now.
I was an officer. I'm not an officer now, but I was.
Yeah. So you know that there is a way, if a police officer wants to hurt with handcuffs, there is a beautiful way of doing that. And they did everything they could to torture me in a very effective way. They handcuffed me in such a way that there was constant pain. And what on top of that they did, they pushed me on my back, my head down on the floor in this small little box that I could not even fit. They pushed me on the ground. So there is a bench here. There is a little space between, and there is another bench on the other side. And they pushed me between the two benches. My head is up and my feet are outside and they're not fitting. They can't fit me into this small space. So the officer looks at me, he says, he looks at his partner, he says, if he kicks you, I'll charge him with assault. Like, I mean, my feet are sticking out because of them. They are doing this to me. They're assaulting me right now, and they're threatening me with the charge of assaulting them. I mean, unbelievable. So I realize I'm in a big trouble here. They really want to hurt me. I am on the ground, head down, feet up, on my handcuffs and my hands. So you can imagine 100-kilo body laying on hands that are handcuffed. I was in torture. I can't describe any other word. That
would hurt a lot for sure. There's no question about it.
Oh, that was unbelievable, unbearable. Actually, it was very, very painful. So I realized I have to help them out because they will charge me with an assault if they will still have some trouble in fitting me, pushing me into the car. They're going to say I kicked them, and I didn't kick them, of course. And so I did my best to squeeze even more, laying upside down in that position, and I put my feet at the corner on opposite side, and that's how they pushed, like a sardine. They pushed me into this little space, and that's how I spent an hour. So you can imagine the pain I was. I had bruises for 4 days, and my fingers are tickling still. That's what, 5-6 days after the arrest, my fingers are still tickling. So that gives you an idea what they've done. My circulation was completely cut off from my fingers, and they didn't read me my rights. They took me to downtown, and they stopped in the middle of the road. I could only see the buildings because I was still laying on my back, on top of my hands and my handcuffs. And I looked up and I saw the buildings in downtown. So I knew we were somewhere in downtown. And they went out, and I could hear conversations and laughter. I don't know, they had the coffee break or whatever they had a good time. And after a while, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, one officer opens the doors and he reads me my rights. I was charged with contempt of court order and a criminal offense. To this day, I don't know what that was because I never received documents of my charges. So I talked to the lawyer today and she asked me that. I said, I don't know. They never gave me any documents when they released me from jail. So I don't know what I'm charged with. And the lawyer doesn't know except the contempt of court. The other criminal charge, he came later and he says was withdrawn. They withdrawn the second criminal charge. I was read the rights.
They never told you what that charge was. They never said what it was.
No, he says you're charged under criminal section, blah, 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 blah. He gave me some numbers, but I don't remember the numbers. There was 5 in the numbers, 5-3 something. But I don't know. I don't know the criminal code that much to even understand what was charged with. He didn't tell me. what wrong have I done, except the court contempt to court of the judge's order,
Reaching a court order.
which I never received. It was never given to me. It was never presented to me. It was never read to me. It was never emailed to me. It was never sent by phone to me. It was dropped in the church while I was already officiating a church service, and to them that warrants delivery of that document and process, or whatever they call it. So I was read my rights. The officer was asking me, do you understand? And I was telling him, no, I do not understand. And he says, what do you do not understand? I said, I do not understand why you're breaking the law in the name of the law. And so that's how the conversation was going for a while. And then he slammed the door off. We went to jail at Spy Hill, a processing center. It's a police processing center. We were searched, of course. Everything, whatever we had was taken away from us. My jacket, boots, the tie, the belt, all of it. I asked them for my phone call to the lawyer, which they gave me this time, because we were denied access to the lawyer multiple times during our visit, but this time we were allowed to call. I was taken to one cell. My brother David was taken to another one, a solitary confinement with lights so bright that your eyes hurt just to be there. We were deprived from sleep for 30 hours over there. No blankets, no pillows, concrete. We had to spend all this time on concrete, and no mattress, nothing. Later on, of course, I didn't know at that time. Later on, the lawyers were telling me that they passed the information to the jailers, asking us to contact them to pass the information to us that the lawyers are looking to talk to us. And that was never done. 3 days we spent in jail. Never once they told us that the lawyers are looking to contact with us at all. Then,
oh, sorry, you're there for 3 days. You didn't have to appear before a judge within 24 hours to continue the custody?
No. And we were, for 30 hours, we were denied access to the lawyer. So we couldn't call the lawyer. Somewhere between I was able to talk to the lawyer, and he told me he's going to do everything in his power to get us out of there. But that didn't happen.
So let's talk about this for a second. So you're in jail. You haven't killed anybody. You haven't made threats. You haven't been violent, and you opened a church. I can tell you right now, as a former police officer, and I really do love the fact that I was a police officer. I love the people I work with. There are some really good people there. I would, some of the best people I've ever met are police officers. This behavior that you're describing, I've seen it. I believe you. It's abhorrent. It's not something that I'm used to. And I'm sure you can appreciate, prior to, when you first came to Canada, like you were describing earlier, the policing profession in Canada is a very honorable profession. Aside from what we've seen lately, this is not honorable. This is very dishonorable. This is, I'm telling you, my heart pours out to you, because you do not deserve the treatment that you've received. From what I've seen, you don't deserve it. And I've listened to you now. We've been talking for over an hour now. Your story is very compelling. We're at the point now where it has happened, and I hope there's recourse against these officers. I personally do. And I hope this is going to be an example to other officers that this is not how you treat people. There will be consequences if you treat people like this, if you take away their rights and treat and abuse them the way you've described. This is not right. This is not how we treat people. So let me ask you this, Pastor. At this point, you've gone through this, you've been released. The legal battle is in full force. I'm going to presume you're exercising that right, correct?
Yes, we have a team of lawyers right now, and we are defending ourselves. I just spent 2 hours with the lawyer today, strategizing and giving affidavit of what really happened, because my ordeal in jail, it's not end. We were taken to remand. We were denied access multiple times to the lawyer. We were thrown in a tank, and I'm sure you know what that means. the filthiest place you can imagine. And we are in the middle of pandemic, we were told, and I was arrested because I'm endangering people's lives during the pandemic. And I was thrown with my brother to the filthiest place you can imagine, where about 30 inmates were coming in and out. No sanitary, no sanitation, no soap, no cleaning the floors or the benches. You sat on a bench and you were kind of stuck to the bench because it was so filthy and dirty. And they're telling us that we are not following the health regulations, while in jail, you got this filth. Spy Hill was a beautiful, clean place. Police station, I'm telling you. And some officers that came, especially, I even wrote them down because as an officer, you will appreciate this. We dealt with Gestapo there, for sure. But then this shift change and the staff sergeant, his name is Campbell, comes. Staff Sergeant Campbell comes. He sees what is happening and he says, this is unacceptable. This is, do you need to call a lawyer? I said, yes. Okay. How else can we help you? I said, we are here 30 hours on concrete. Every bone in my body hurts. Can you provide us with a blanket or pillow or mattress or anything? Yes. So he did that. And he even, APO Thomas Daniels, he even brought me a coffee. And I was provided with the Bible. After many hours begging them for a Bible, finally, one officer came. After this Campbell staff sergeant came, he presented us with the Bible. However, this didn't last very long because a couple hours later, we were transferred to hell, where another set of Gestapo denied all of our human rights. They said, we cannot call the lawyers. No mattress, no pillow, no blankets. We were in an extremely cold cell when my brother was shivering, like really shivering. So I said to him, look, if this was about health, we are healthy people, but after this ordeal, I'm not sure if we're going to come out of this place healthy. Because if there is a deadly virus, we all have it. We all have it right now. And not because of us, it's because of them, because of their negligence. And then the shift changed and another officer came in charge of this. And he looked at this and I told him, I said, we were denied access to the lawyer. And he says, what? You know, like you got two sets of people. You got humans and you got some kind of animals, Gestapo wannabe tyrants. One set, the Gestapo doesn't care about your rights. They hate you and they're showing who is the boss. And then another set of people are coming and they said, what is happening here? 3 hours he fought for us to get a mattress, this gentleman in the night shift in Remand Center. And I don't know what the conversation, because I was not hearing what they were talking about. 3 hours, this man from 12 o'clock at night, that's second day. So we are there all day, all night, all day and half night already. The night are rights. And this guy is fighting for us to get a blanket for us and a mattress. 3 hours, he's coming back and he says, they don't want to agree. They don't want to agree. Our bosses don't want to agree. I don't know what to do, but I'll keep trying. I'll keep trying. 3 in the morning, finally, we were processed. He promised to give us a bed in a cell until the trial. And that was the night as well. We were never taken to the cell. We were always in a fish tank. And finally, he says, the only thing I can do, the bosses are not agreeing. They're not allowing me to transfer you guys to a cell with the bed. So what can I do? I can bring a mattress for you. And finally, he did. From 3 to 6 in the morning when we were taken to court, we received a blanket and we received a mattress. So that was really cool to see, because one set of villains, because they were the real villains, and then a set of humans. And I look at this and I said to my brother, look, for them, this is a job. Do your job. Don't be a judge and executioner. You don't know the circumstances. Don't take vengeance in your own head. Just do your job. Your job is to transfer me from one place to another, not to hurt me, not to punish me, not to torture me. Do your job. And the job says I should be provided with food, I should be provided with something to drink, I should be provided with a blanket, with necessities of life. For 3 days, we were not received a brush, toothbrush, nothing, not a soap.
And you know, it should, a lot of people don't understand this, so I'm just going to say this. While you're in the remand center, while you're in police custody at this time, you are still an innocent man. You haven't been convicted of anything.
That's right.
So so for you to be treated with such a lack of dignity, an innocent person. I mean, in Canada, we have the right to be presumed innocent. That's what this is all about. And we have to treat people with dignity. And once again, my heart goes out to you, because this is not how I've treated people 13 years on the job. This is not how my fellow officers have treated people. There are bad apples, no question about it. But what is happening now in your story is over the top. It's shameful. I can't even. I want to use stronger words, but it is shameful is all I can come up with. I mean, it's horrible what you experienced. Don't let me interrupt you. Please continue.
Yeah. So again, I want to be fair. I promised I'll tell the story, and I'm doing my best to tell the story that not all police officers are evil. There are some good police officers. I met them. And even during those 3 days of ordeal, I met good people there, good people that one man was physically shaken. You could see him being shaken emotionally. He says, what they've done to you is wrong. This is just wrong. How can I help you to help you in this ordeal? The bosses are not allowing me to do anything. I cannot transfer you to bed, but what can I do? So we managed to get the mattress. He took us to the shower. We had the shower, and they gave us the blue suits and whatever. And when we were giving our clothes away, there is another guy over there, and he says, Pastor Artur. And I said, oh, so you know who I am? And he says, yes, don't worry, Jesus is with you. You know, so you see those humans there. You see the human human aspect of the job, and you can tell those are real deal. They're doing their job to the best to their ability. And then you got the Gestapo, because when we came back from the court, we were shackled, of course, the feet, proper criminals, I mean, terrorists. And, you walk like a little duck, with those chains to your legs.
It hurts.
It hurts. My brother had a very hard time to walk with this. And, maybe I should educate him. Maybe now he knows, because he wanted to walk faster. I walked extremely slow. So it took a while, but I was not in extreme pain. He wanted to be a little bit faster, and it was like boom, boom, boom. After a while, every bone in his leg was hurting. So we were dealing with two sets of people. In the end, when we were taken back to the Remand Center, the officers that took us, the sheriffs, they played the most filthiest songs you can imagine on the radio, like F this and F that, some rapper, and talking about sex and doing stuff to women. And my brother says, because we were transferred with a woman, so it was me, my brother, and a woman in 3 separate compartments within this big van. And David says to the officers at the front, says, don't you have any dignity? Don't you have any shame? There's a woman here, and you're playing this filth. That's the filth. And they started to laugh, and they said, that's the only thing that is on the radio. That's the only thing that is in the radio right now. And then they were laughing after. So we were taken to the remand. We were taken to another cell. That's why I'm telling you, the fish tank that we spent a day and a night there, then we see the fresh fish, that's how they call them. The fresh is coming, the fresh meat, I guess, according to those jailers. And I saw a lot of people coming in and going out. And if that was a deadly virus, the cross-contamination was happening nonstop. And not because of the inmates, it was because of the jailers. The jailers were creating sickness. If there was any sickness, those people would be sick for sure, including us. And then they were mocking us. So the judge already says to us and to them, release them. He gives the order. But no, that's not the end of the story. They didn't want to release us. My brother's name is David, Dawid. That's the Polish spelling of his name. But they disagreed. They said, no, that's not his spelling. It has to be with a V. But the lawyer says, but that's not his name. His name is not David, English. It's David, Polish spelling. And they disagreed. And they kept us for hours. And during that time, a jailer would come in front of everyone and would just raise his hands and like, praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. And they would point at us and they would just laugh hysterically. And they were pointing at us and making jokes. And It looked like they were reading a newspaper article because we were in the news, and they were just flipping and having good time. And the officer were like, praise the Lord, pointing at us and laughing. I mean, that's sick. Those are sick people, because they didn't do their job. They turned this whole thing into a vengeance. And eventually, after many hours, even though the judge ordered them to release us, they would not release us. The lawyer had to really, really fight to get us out of there. And 7 p.m. finally, we were kicked out from jail. Literally kicked out. They kicked us out because we wanted to dress. We wanted to dress ourselves. They didn't allow us to dress. They get out. And I'm like, I want to dress myself before I go outside. No, out. And they yelled at us to kick us out. And every time we stopped trying to put the belt on us and a jacket, they would yell, scream from the speakers, get out of this facility, get out. So finally I said to David, let's better get out, or they will find something else to arrest us again. And 3 days we were eager to go home and shower and brush our teeth. I mean, 3 days we were not allowed to do that. So I was charged with my brother David with contempt of court order, even though I didn't receive the order. My brother was not aware of the content of the order. It was never presented to him. It was never read to us. But here it is. Next Thursday, we are facing the trial.
So you're prepared for court is it your trial or your first appearance?
Trial.
Okay.
The AHS and the government really, really want us behind the bars. And they actually, here is what I learned during the appearance from jail. We were taken from jail to see the judge. He said from his own mouth, he says, I received a phone call from the Chief Justice of Alberta asking me for a favor to look into this matter personally. So that's what he said. So now the Chief Justice of the province of Alberta, with the premier that came public in front of the cameras, and he said, I'll crush Pawlowskis. That's what he said to the media. I will crush Pawlowskis. The Minister of Justice, Mr. Madhu, says that he's going to crack down on us. And now his Chief Justice is asking for a favor, another judge, to do the trial for us. I'm really concerned.
I wish you God's blessings in your upcoming trial. We can talk about that, but let's move on to something else right now, which is very pertinent to the story that you're discussing. We talked earlier about what you've been facing, the harassment you've been facing, the onslaught of it during this COVID time. You talked about 1981 in Poland, and many people are asking the question, how do we deal with this? What do we do? Can we deal with this? Can we win this? Can we get ourselves out of this? From a person who's experienced this, what would your advice be?
Well, it will be the same thing I have been saying to people since the first attack on my freedoms in 2005. 2005, 2006, my first arrest for reading the Bible. It taught me something that now I'm repeating all over the place. The system is corrupted. There's a lot of evil people within the system. And I witnessed that growing up under communist dictatorship. And I remember the times when the system was corrupted to the core. So what the Polish people did, because of course I was young, I was just a kid at that time. So what the adults did that I witnessed, they had absolutely no other option but to take it to the streets. When millions of Polish people decided that enough is enough, we're not going to live as their slaves, we're not going to comply, we have to do a civil disobedience and stop working for the tyrants, stop supporting the tyrants, stop complying to the tyrants, they took it to the streets. So here is what I saw. Millions of Poles took it to the streets. Tens of thousands were arrested. Some were shot dead, some were clapped to death, but not that many, but they were people murdered by the authorities, police, and the soldiers. But a year later, they got their freedom. Because it took a while until everything unfolded, of course, but a year later, they made the deal with the government, and the government had to open up and gave them back their rights, and they signed different declarations. So the process started already. It still took a few years, but it's already started. And the government realized we can't stop this anymore. The people have enough, and they're going to murder us, because now the police were running for their lives. And this is my message to the police. You gotta be very careful how you play this game. Because now you got your guns and your tasers and your handcuffs, and you think you're the law. When the people have no recoil, when the people are pushed to the corner, when they will think that there's nothing they can do, they can't go to courts, the politicians betray them, and police are mafia, they're going to start turning on the police. And in Europe right now, you see people fighting with the police, beating police up. I saw that with my own eyes. When the people had enough, they started to chase the police, and the police were running for their lives. Because imagine 50,000 communists against millions of Polish people on the streets. Yeah, police could kill few, but not all, not all. And they started to run, and the police were hiding. Police were afraid to come out. They actually left their homes because people knew where they are living. And it was a witch hunt. After the collapse of communism, the Polish people were on a witch hunt, and they were chasing out with vengeance to all those officers that hurt them in the previous years. The same thing happened to the Nazis. If you know your history, the Nazis did a lot of damage to lots of people. But in 1945, when the Russians took Berlin, 2 million German women were raped during that time. The Russians just pillaged, raped, and destroyed the entire German population because they were so angry. They were so angry, and they were filled with vengeance. They were filled with hate against the Nazis. When the police are going to keep pushing, the anger from the public, the hate from the public is going to intensify. And I'm telling you, I'm a pastor. I know psychology. I work with people's minds, and I hear what they are saying. You can push them only so far, and then the people snap. They snapped in Poland. They got their freedom, and the cops were running for their lives, and politicians as well. So the answer is very simple. This is your country. This is your inheritance. Those rights are yours. You have to use them. You have to exercise them. And if the government is not allowing you to exercise your rights, God and state given rights, then you have to take it to the streets. You have to take it in a civil disobedience. You have to do anything you can to say to the government, I will not comply. I will not work with you, because there is no future in a totalitarian regime. What I learned in history is that bully keeps bullying until someone says to the bully, enough, stop. Evil will keep doing evil until the evil is stopped. So now the question is to every Canadian, what kind of a country do you want to have? A free country where your children can be blessed, work hard, achieve something? What kind of a legacy are you going to give to your children? What kind of a country, what kind of future you dreamed for my children? Because I know that I don't want my children to experience what I experienced. I emigrated here to this country for that reason, not for the money. I had a lot more money in Greece. I could stay there and I could have an amazing, within a year, I made enough money to build my own palace. Okay, I could stay there and have an amazing life, but everything was run by corruption, and I didn't want my children to grow up in a corrupted country. I came to Canada because this nation was offering me law and order and freedom. Those were the two things. If I can work hard, then I can achieve a lot. If that's what I want. If I want more money, I'll do 2 jobs. That's my business, not the government business. Right now, it looks like the government is infringing on everything, on every aspect of our lives, not just religion, but where you can go to work, which store you can shop at. They're murdering middle class, destroying the small and medium-sized businesses, while the corporation. You see, I cannot have a church, but Walmart can have his church with hundreds of people inside. I cannot have church, but IKEA on the front, it says only 480 people allowed. Only 480 people allowed. They can have their church. Safeway, Superstore, they can have their church, but I cannot have mine. because the state says so. If you are okay with that, then you're a very delusional individual, and you just don't know what is going to happen to you. Many people will say, just comply, just obey the rules. It's just 2 weeks after all. And you know what? At the beginning, I did social distance the people. Even my brother was with a stick and then was making sure it's the 6 feet. We've done the dancing around. We've done everything. It was not good enough for the government. They still shut us down. And they said 2 weeks, and now it's 14 months. When is going to be when people will wake up and say, there is something wrong with this? It doesn't make any sense. They say we're in the middle of the deadliest pandemic. You know, in the city of Calgary, there was less hospitalization in the 2020 than in 2018 and 2019. Do you know that in the province of Alberta, we had less people in intensive care as a record since 2015? 6-year record low. We have been lied to. They keep lying to us. They keep using this fake emergency to take every right we have. I remember when I started to fight with the government, they said separation between the state and the church. What happened with that? They demanded that the church would not influence the government. They demanded that the church would not interfere with the government. You do your thing, we do our thing. But now they are infringing on our rights. Where is the separation between the state and the church now? Where is the rights of the people? Yesterday, I went, Google it up, go to my YouTube channel, and you will see a video that was recorded yesterday at the Palestinian protest in the city of Calgary. So I was arrested on a highway, dragged like a piece of meat, spent 3 days in jail, I'm facing criminal charges, contempt of court. And the same week, the week is not over, and the imam is calling out the protest. And yesterday, 2,000 Muslims showed up at his mosque publicly, many of them not wearing masks, no physical distancing, and nowhere police to be found. They stayed outside to monitor only. They were telling us right now in a press conference, they said we were just there to monitor the situation. So if you don't see the double standards, if you don't see them lie, you're completely deaf and you're completely blind, I would say to Canadians. So how come pastor is being dragged for his crime of opening the church? Because protests are illegal in a province of Alberta, and an imam can do whatever he wants.
Well, I think you and I both know it's politicians trying to divide the population. They're trying to get us to fight amongst one another. This is what's happening. I firmly believe this. They're doing this to divide us, to try to conquer us, to assert their power. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, it's a sickening thing. So, hopefully in the name of Jesus, everything will finish well. We're exposing the corruption. We'll keep exposing the corruption. And I think the government is afraid of us. I'll tell you why, because we're growing stronger and stronger. The more they are cracking, the more people are coming to us. We had like 4,000 people at our rally, and we have 11 political candidates just in our church. People have enough, and they're rising up, and they want to replace crooked politicians, the politicians that should be charged with treason, because that's what they are. They have betrayed the people. They should be charged criminally with treason. Their salary taken, their pensions taken away from them, and the criminal charges on those people. And we started to talk like this, and that's the answer from the corrupted Jason Kenney, the premier of Alberta, and the corrupted Minister of Justice, Mr. Madu. How dare he say that he's a Minister of Justice while he does stuff like this?
Pastor, I'm in 100% agreement with you. These are crimes against humanity, what is happening now. It is obvious this is happening. And you're right, just sitting here acquiescing, complying is not the answer. Civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience, not violence, but
that's right.
We have to absolutely disobey, because this 2 weeks is now over a year and it's not helping. We're just doing the same thing over and over again. You can't go to church, but you can take drugs in your house. You can't go to church, but you can buy liquor in the store. Like right now in Ontario, you can't buy socks and underwear. That's cut off. You can't buy anything. You can only go to the grocery store to buy food. You can't buy anything else. You can't buy a board game to pass the time in your house while you're sitting with your children. They don't want you going outside to parks. Those are all closed off. You can't go golfing. You can't do anything. Right now, people have had enough. There's a rally coming up all over the World Freedom March this Saturday. I'm speaking in Toronto. There's in every major city in Ontario, there's going to be many thousands of people. We're expecting over 100,000 in Toronto. We'll see what happens, but people have had enough. And I
But
agree
here in the province of Alberta, so you need to warn the people. If they will not rise up, that the tactics will be used against you the same way. The court order says that you are not allowed to protest in the province of Alberta. Protest has become illegal. Gathering, rallies, protests is prohibited by the court order, and that's what I'm being charged with.
Right.
They are not saying the church. They're saying I did a gathering, which was against the judge's order. Therefore, I have to be found, according to them, in contempt of court order. That's how crazy this whole thing becomes.
So just so you know, you're right. They tried to do that in Ontario and the judge struck it down. They would not allow the attorney general to go forward with that. So that was struck down. So even though they're trying to use psychological tactics here in Toronto, like in Ontario, I mean, in Toronto, they have signs everywhere. Gatherings in public are illegal. Obey the law. I mean, it's 1984. It's totalitarian communism. It's exactly what you've described, and people are not listening. Not anymore. People have had enough. You have your contingent of people that still believe that this COVID thing is going to kill us, even though your statistics are absolutely correct. There is less hospitalizations. There is less illness. People are people who are previously dying of old age. Nobody dies of old age anymore. Just COVID.
Oh. Tell me about it right now. Everything. I have nurses, doctors. You know how many doctors contacted me? I mean, still practicing doctors, but they cannot go public because they're terrified. They're going to lose their license. And nurses contacted me, and this is their story. Just in a minute. A friend of mine cut a finger. A cut not totally off, but a finger. They put stitches, send that individual home, and send a notice, you are to stay at home with the COVID. But the person was not tested. She was a nurse, just cut her finger, no problems. And she phones back. I said, but I don't have COVID. And they said, come on, be quiet. We get extra money. The hospital gets extra money if it's COVID. You get extra money. You spend 2 weeks at home and it's paid for. Come on, keep your mouth shut. So I hear stories like this left and right. People that go for testing, but for whatever reason, they don't finish the test, they go home and they get positive responses, positive testings sent to their home. I mean, they were never tested. We hear about stories of doctors being forced to classify patients as COVID patients. This is left and right. So if people are not seeing this, if they're not realizing what is really going on, it's a pretty sad situation. Stop listening to the mainstream propaganda machinery, because in Poland, that's the only thing they were feeding people. And people had to look for sources outside of the propaganda. That's why they were arrested. They were arrested not because they were terrorists and doing bad things. No, just because they were listening to a European radio to find out the truth. Now the truth is against the law.
Yep. You and I are in very much agreement with this. We recognize what is really happening here, and the stories that you've been describing, I'm hearing this here too. We do have doctors coming on board and saying this is wrong. They're challenging their medical boards that are trying to do the same thing, put their thumb on them and prevent them from speaking. Otherwise, they get charged. There's hearings. They could have their license suspended. They can't earn an income, and those are the levers these people are using. And this is why my personal belief is they're trying to destroy businesses, because that's the first rung. These are the first people that are free. They can do what they want. They don't have an employer. They own their own businesses. They're subject to the good standard of their craftsmanship and their work.
That's right. That's exactly what is happening. If you want to subdue the nation, if you want to enslave the nation, you must eliminate the middle class. Middle class are hardworking people. Those are types of people that love their country. They're very patriotic. Usually they have very high moral standards. They want to pass something. They have businesses from generation to generation. Oh, my grandfather had it. My father had it. This little store. It's my pride. It's a pride of the family. That's our family company, a family restaurant, whatever it is. And they want to pass that to their children. And that is the first target. And that was also the first target during the Soviets. The first thing they did, they eliminated the middle class because they're highly educated people. They're well-traveled. You can just lie to them. They know better. They need to go.
Yeah, that's how they came up with the term, the kulaks, the ones that own the farms. They have the cows, and they villainize them. They make other people who don't have it become jealous. They're stealing from you, these kulaks. They need to be punished. They need to be taken under the arm of the state and done away with.
Yeah, because the state needs only two categories of people, and that's exactly what happened in Poland. Extremely powerful, so the communists, the ruling class, and that's why they tell you we are in this together while they're raising themselves salary, and you got to survive on $900. They're telling you we are in this together, stay home or else I will send the Nazis chasing you, and they go to Florida, they go to Hawaii, they go to Europe vacationing, right? Bonnie Crombie, a chief health officer in the province of British Columbia, she just locked about 2 months ago the entire province. And you know the first thing she did? She hired a private chopper, not wearing masks at the airport, and she took off to visit her family. While she just locked the entire province, telling people you cannot go anywhere, off she went to see her family in a private government chopper.
It's ridiculous. Pastor, this has been a wonderful conversation. I am very grateful for you to take the time to speak with us today. I'm glad we had a chance to have your story heard. There are a lot of people asking questions about what had happened and what your experience was. And this will appear on the Police on Guard website, and people will be seeing your story. So I really want to sincerely thank you, Pastor. God bless you. God bless your work and all the great things you're doing for your community. Our society definitely needs more people like you. Thank you.
Thank you. If people want to contact me, they can contact me by art, A-R-T, at streetchurch.ca. And they can also visit our website, www.streetchurch.ca. And I'm on YouTube, Artur Pawlowski TV. Usually I update the YouTube and the Facebook. But, you know, if you want to contact me, I do my best to reply to every email or text or phone call to the best of my ability, even if it's just thank you or bless you. So thank you for all your support. Thank you for covering this story. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Because you know what I said to my brother David when we were there? I said, I guess we have to wait a little bit longer until police officers, judges, more politicians, doctors, nurses will rise up and start to speak as well. Because we can become martyrs. That's the easiest thing for us to do right now, just to be locked for half a year or a year in jail. But what this would accomplish, if we are eliminated from the fight, we are eliminated from the fight. At least now, every day I can speak and challenge people and tell the story. So I said to him, maybe we have to wait a little bit longer until more Canadians are willing to pay the price and stand up. So that's how I want to finish. Rise up. This is your country. No one is going to fight for your country. You got to fight for your country. No one is going to fight for your families, for your children and your grandchildren. You have to do that. In this history, if this unique history, God has given us opportunity to do what's right, and it's always the right thing to do the right thing. That's our time to shine. It's our time to stand up. It's our time to say to God, here we are, Lord, use us. You need to be used by God. And if God is for you, who can be against you? Greater is he that is in me than the one that is in those villains. We know how the story ends. We've read the Bible. We know how it ends. We win in the end.
We will win. We will win. And just one last thing I want to say is, people ask me all the time, well, Rob, you used to be a police officer. What happens if you get arrested? What happens if they arrest you? What happens if they arrest me? What do we do? And I tell them, the fight for freedom has to be earned. It's not given. And if you're going to participate in the fight, you're going to get bruised. That's just the reality. You have to accept that you're going to get bruised. But look at Gandhi, peacefully recaptured India. And this is what we're doing. We're in a crisis in Canada right now, a political crisis. Our politicians are trying to take us over, create a slave class, and I'm not going to stand for it. And I'll tell you one thing, Pastor, we talked a lot about police officers today. There are a tremendous group of police officers. We have in the hundreds that have joined us, and these are serving people. serving police officers. They're joining our cause. They're standing up. And I expect this Saturday, there's going to be police officers who are actually serving, who are going to be standing up in front of the microphone. We've already had situations like this because they're tired of it. They see the evil that is going on. They are not going to stand by it. So the reason I'm telling you this, and I want other people to see this too, don't paint all police officers with the same brush, just like you've described when you were in your remand center. There are people who have good hearts. Police officers are a visible minority in society. It's easy to paint them all because they all look the same with the same brush. But there are people who are willing to give up everything. We've had police officers quit. We've had police officers sacrifice their promotions, sections that they want to go to. It sounds small, but these things mean a lot. And now it's getting to the point where the police officers are saying, I don't care what the consequences are. I'm going to stand up because I want to be on the right side of history.
Yeah. Can I finish with the prayer?
Please do. Yes.
You're absolutely right. And like I said, that's why I promised those gentlemen I'm going to tell that story as well, because it's easy to say to the people, I was a victim. Yes, I was. And they've done bad things to me. However, it was not all of those people that were bad. There were good people there. And I have to tell their story too. I can't just, pretend that I was a victim all that time and all of those people were evil. No, some of them were good and they did their best to ease our pain, mine and my brothers, and assist us in any way they could at that moment during those circumstances. So I want to bless them. I want to bless Father God. I want to bless every officer that is a good man, that wants to do what is right, anyone that is opposing tyranny, everyone that is caught between the rock and the hard place and is struggling because they have families, they have mortgages, they want to pay the bills and they don't know what to do. Maybe they're not brave enough yet. Maybe it's the price is too much at this moment. I pray you would give them boldness. I pray that you would give them courage. I pray that they will have this passion in their hearts that it's worth it to even pay with everything. I bless them today in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. I bless everyone that serves and protects, either in armed forces or police or peace officers or agents of the state, whatever capacity they are finding themselves right now. Father, I bless them with your perfect will. I pray that they will do what's right. I pray that they would pursue the truth and that the truth will set them free every time in the name of Jesus. And I also pray that you would protect them as they want to do what's right. Protect those that they were in Spy Hill and they treated me with honor. Under the circumstances, and they showed humanity, and those people at Riemann that provided us, at least for those few hours, the mattress. Bless them, keep them, protect them. And for the villains, for the wicked, evil people, I will say this, Father, on the cross you said, forgive them because they do know not what they do. They do not know what they do. They do not know that they're fighting with the living God, that they're hurting God's children, and there are consequences that will follow them for the rest of their lives unless they repent. So I pray for repentance. I pray that you would open their eyes like you opened the eyes of Saul. First, he was blinded, and then when you give him the eyes, he could see clearly what really was going on. I bless those people, those villains today, those enemies of yours, just like we were your enemies. I bless them with salvation in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Let them be our brothers and sisters. Would that be an amazing turn of event if those people that hurt us would become our friends? I would love that, Father. Make it happen in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen. Pastor, it was wonderful praying with you. It was wonderful sharing our prayer. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless. And may God give you everything you need, all the resources you need, all the people. I know that my friends from our church that served in armed forces contacted and signed your, your thing. So I'm going to be spreading left and right for others to join because we need an army. We need an army of lovers of this country. This is our country. Let's keep it glorious and free.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor. I wish you well on Thursday, and please keep in touch.
God bless.
God bless.